Back on the news feed, PM, thanks for staying on. As South Africa prepares to commemorate Youth Day on Monday, the 16th of June, Build One South Africa is drawing our attention to a critical but often overlooked issue affecting the nation's youth. That is unequal pay and exploitative employment practices, particularly in the historically disadvantaged communities. Now, each year, thousands of young graduates and job seekers are entering the labor market that, despite their qualification and willingness to work, too often fails them. Many find themselves stuck in cycles of underemployment and exploitation, receiving wages far below a fair standard. For more on this issue, we're joined now by Mmusi Maimane, leader of Build One South Africa. Mmusi, good to have you, and thank you very much for coming on. We are grappling with youth unemployment. It's a big issue. It's a tough nut to crack, if you like. We have spoken to you back and forth on this. We still don't have a handle on it. Doesn't look like we're going to do so anytime soon. Now you're adding on top of that, there is also a question of youth underemployment. What is that about?
Yeah, good afternoon, and good afternoon to fellow South Africans. I mean, I think what's most vital that we must remind ourselves is that our economy at this point in time is consumption-led. Now, that's in some ways less than ideal, but you want to increase people's ability to consume in the economy. And what often happens is that a graduate applies, and what we're saying is that for the available jobs that are there, you need to ensure that ultimately when someone gets into the inquiry phase, that the employer advertises accurately what the job bands are, or the salary bands, and cannot use your historical conditions to be able to benchmark your salary. So now if you imagine in a sea of unemployment, when people enter the job market in fact, maybe for the first time, whatever the case might be, or maybe they might be still working for a while. Let's take an accountant who was working in a small firm and then moves into a bigger accounting firm for a job that they saw. The bigger accounting firm can't say, well, in the old accounting firm, you were earning, for argument's sake, 10,000 Rand. We're going to just add inflation onto that and benchmark your salary to that. Whereas the person they are replacing or their job that was created is worth 20,000. We're saying that's an injustice. It must be addressed. You find that often in gender issues, particularly gender parity issues, that women are often paid less than men for doing exactly the same job. And you'd find people get promoted in a workplace and they become partners in a law firm and discover that the PA is earning as much as they are, yet they are senior in position. What we are saying is that let us create a just and a fair pay. Let's ensure that actually we increase money supply and make it easier for young people to enter the job market. And that at the point of negotiating, just because there are high levels of unemployment should not mean a person applying must be put at the absolute back foot.
Is this unequal pay trend more prevalent in formal or informal employment? Where do you see it most?
Well, we see it particularly in formal employment because that's people who are using traditional means of recruiting employees, and so you get advertising a lot. But you find the informal market is under-regulated, and that's why it is informal, and so negotiating power there varies. But it becomes problematic. You find the age-old example of the bakkie brigade, where someone has a bakkie, employs people, doesn't benchmark their salaries, and because people are desperate, they take whatever is available for them on the day and they keep going, despite their experience. And we see this often when you find bricklayers, plumbers, almost services industry. Ours is Build One South Africa saying, yes, we have an economic crisis. Yes, we need to create more jobs, but where the jobs are, let there be justice, because two wrongs don't make a right. Just because there's unemployment does not mean exploitation must follow.
Yeah, I mean, when you talk about gender pay gap, for example, factors that would be cited there could be things like education, things like workplace discrimination. What are the factors that are contributing to this unequal pay that we are seeing, especially of graduates entering the job market?
Much of it is really a historical injustice. You find that because, particularly in professional services, many white South Africans and many men were able to enter the workplace quicker for our own historical issues, which I don't need to go into. You find they accumulate the right experience. You find there's a bracket creep because they experience inflationary related or above inflationary related increases annually. And so when they leave their job and a woman comes in, almost if you don't have what this bill that we're proposing, you find that someone can literally say, well, you are new, you're a woman, we could pay you less than what we did the person who was occupying the job. So that's on one variable. And so it's a historical issue. But furthermore, you find that in the question of negotiating in order to be able to achieve parity, the assertiveness of women to be able to stand and have rights, which is what this bill will do. It says you have the right to go to interview colleagues that are working in that place. You can introduce that assertiveness to say that people working in the same department doing the same job are being paid X. Why would you want to pay me less, or rather than paying me the same as them?
Yeah, we've got policies like affirmative action, triple BEE. I don't need to tell you how those have got pushback. But if we are to address this pay gap, if you like, the policy requirements, I presume, that will promote equal pay, but also there need to be policies in place that will encourage transparency to the issue that you're raising when it comes to pay practices. How do we get there?
Well, this is an amendment to the Employment Equity Bill. So that speaks to that issue of redress, justice, etc. So this is an amendment to it. And what we're saying is that in the same ways that there are guiding policy that show how a bill is passed, how a job is advertised, how interviews take place, so that you don't actually have discriminatory practice. This would just amend and add to that. And all we're asking the employer to do is to say, advertise the job, advertise the bands, and pay the people who are coming into that job the same as what you've advertised, rather than saying to them, give me your old pay slip so that I can determine for myself what you are worth, rather than determining what actually the job is worth as a historical practice.
How far is that bill now, and what does it need to get through?
Well, ultimately, it now goes into the portfolio committee. There'll be still processes of public participation, so citizens can make their inputs. And then the committee will then make the appropriate recommendations and amendment. And then post that, we should hopefully see it in the National Assembly and get it voted on. So we're still in the beginning phase of introducing the law. But I think as lawmakers, it's important that we hear from citizens who say, Mmusi, I'm doing the same job, but I'm not being paid the same. And what we're saying is, let's help and let us fight that issue, because if our constitution begins with the words identifying our historical injustices, well, all laws that we pass in this country must be able to address that. And this is not just an issue of race, it could be of gender, it could be of experience, it could be as young people coming in. We're simply introducing a high level of fairness into the system.
Mmusi Maimane, leader of Build One South Africa, appreciate your time. Thank you for coming on this afternoon, raising the issue of unequal pay and exploitative employment practices that, of course, come because of a lack of transparency, but maybe also because of a lack of policy direction as far as that is concerned.